white policeman who was telling the people to dig at a spot and, saying, this is where we killed your daughter and buried your daughter. And this old lady, according to the radio, was holding the bones of her daughter. And she felt so grateful knowing what had happened. That would not have happened through trying to be even with justice, because you would have sentenced a guy maybe to death or to 30 years in jail. You'd never have done that. And I sat listening to that radio and I said, there's no way I would have delivered these bones to this old lady. But here's somebody who came, confessed, and said, we killed your daughter. We didn't agree with your daughter. She wanted freedom. This is where we buried her. These are the bones. And it doesn't mean it takes the pain away, but at least it clears up the situation. And it makes for a better country because, before the eyes of God, we all have clay feet. We are all poor people, that we say in the Methodist Church. So, it takes a lot to build a country. And then people say to me, but why can't this work in other countries? It never works in other countries because people don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear what you did to me. Yeah, please tell them what you did to me. And, so that, I could feel like, yes, you see, now they're saying, but it's not only what you did to me, what did I intend to do to you? Because in doing that, somewhere in the middle of this, we meet to create and find reconciliation, which builds a different country. But again, having done this, it doesn't make it easy, but at least it's a way to try and build a country where we can live together. Because, the unique thing about South Africa is that even though the whites oppressed us for all these years, but, the whites in South Africa belong to South Africa. They've been there now close to 400 years. I mean, after 400 years, where else do you belong except where you are? I mean, you can't turn around and say after 400 years, your grandfather came from Holland, and, working at the UN, it's fascinating because the other day I met a visiting French official, and he was telling me in South Africa we produce the finest wines. And, we owe this a great gift of wines in South Africa because of the religious wars in Europe where, they kicked out the French Huguenots and they went off to the Netherlands, and the Netherlands was into this Dutch East India Company that was sailing around the world. They ended up on those boats and rode on those boats to South Africa, and they brought all this knowledge. And we have this fantastic wine industry that some of the best wines in the world. And, and this French diplomat was telling me that if you go to some parts of the Cape in Franschhoek, and, it's the names are all these French surnames, but they don't speak one word of French. And, they become South Africans. But, and he felt so much about, this tradition and kinship and that dates back all these centuries and people that came from there but who are now there. I mean, so South Africa is a unique country in that sense, in that we have all these people who have been there for all these years and for all this time and in there. So in South Africa, we had to find a way to live together. It didn't mean when we got freedom we had to throw out the white people. Now, a lot of people are giving us advice. Man, if I were you, we get freedom, they better start building those boats and get out of there. But where would they go to? These are South Africans. So we had to find ways to live together. And this is what we're doing, and we try it every day. And, sometimes it's challenging, sometimes it's not challenging. One of the other things we realize as South Africa, and I'm just giving you these few sketches because maybe in the answer and question session we can have a dialogue about it. One of the things we realized as South Africa was that, we are the richest country on the African continent. And, we have a very thriving economy. We have industries in Africa that you can't find elsewhere in Africa. We have a drug industry, we have an armaments industry. We have all these industries. So South Africa is a very wealthy country, and, and all that. But we decided that, We could easily say we are lucky, we are endowed, we've got everything we want, and forget about our neighbors. But we couldn't be an island of wealth in a neighborhood that was very poor. So consciously the government decided that our foreign policy would begin with our neighbors. And we have to try and help the neighboring countries, some of them that are landlocked within South Africa, like Lesotho and Botswana and Zimbabwe, and you hear about all these countries. We have a consciousness about how to assist them, and to become also just as prosperous and as we can be, and so that they could be better neighbors with us. Because if you are just a rich country to yourself, you don't think of your next door neighbors. I mean, you are inviting trouble, because when hunger happens and poverty and disease, people just come across the border, and they come into your own country and do that. And so we extended that not only just to our neighbors or to our region, but to Africa as well. And as South Africa, we're very active in Africa to try and build its institutions, human rights institutions, democracy. Because if we are a democratic country in South Africa, and we are the only ones that are democratic, what message are we sending? And what message are we sending? This is why, I can say these things because I'm going to leave very soon. This is why I think the United States is misguided about people from Mexico and other places. This whole thing about immigration, it's totally misguided. Because as long as you don't treat these people from across the border very well, what do you think is going to happen? You can build a whole fence right down the Rio Grande River, all the way to Texas. And they're going to find a way to come here because they have to live. And, and if they come here and it's very interesting. Whenever I've met people here from Mexico and all the so-called illegal aliens, these are people who want to come and work in the United States, but they want to go back home. Because one of the things we want to do as human beings is to go back home. And so if you are going to deny these people and say, we won't even give them the right to go there, they are here illegally, why can't they do that? It's very, very short-sighted. And because the whole issue of migration is an issue of the whole world. It's not only in the United States. It's happening in Europe, and it's happening in Africa. It's happening elsewhere. So you can't try to be an island and say, we are going to be America. We'll keep the rest of them out there. They are all illegal and all that. It's not going to work. You have to find a way to accommodate, because this country is great because of immigrants. People come to the United States. I was very privileged that when I ran away from the evil of apartheid, the United States gave me political asylum. I am forever thankful about that. You might not believe that I have a Brooklyn accent, but I lived in Brooklyn and I worked on my accent. I am very thankful to this country that it did that. And I will always remember this country for that. But it's nice also to go back home. And so not everybody wants to come and stay forever. So people want to come, contribute to this country, and be able to go back home. So we as South Africa say, even our continent, we have to assist. And the next thing, we want to assist the world. And we use our own experience. In South Africa, we learned that the most difficult problems, apartheid, you read about it today, you read these books, you shake your head. And as the provost was saying, if you read Nadine Gordimer and all these books, you read them and shake your head. Is this what people lived through? How could they live through this? So we learned from that the best way to answer all this is to always try to find a way to work with the others. Now, let me conclude by telling you about the United Nations where I work. Now, the United Nations is a very interesting place. When I grew up in South Africa in the 1950s, my father had never seen the inside of a classroom. But he always used to say to me, there is UNO. Now, the United Nations